So, welcome to the third official episode of, I guess we're going to call it Streaming with Stoller now. It's a corny title. We are out here today with a new gimbal so that my camera doesn't shake all the time. That's really nice. And I'm out here with my friend Dr. Matthew Olson, who is a forester at Stockton University. Got here last year. You've been here. So we're out here to talk about burning forests. Why burning forests is important. How we burn forests. Why we do them. What happens after we burn forests. Um, as always, we're going to try to make this appealing to sort of middle school, high school, and college levels. So you'll excuse us if some of the terms, and at times maybe they'll get a little complex, but try to make this appealing to everybody. And as always, if you, hi Adrian, if you have any questions that you would like to ask us while we're filming, just type them in the chat box. I've got my eyes posted, and we'll address anything that you would like to. Any teachers that are interested in that are tuning in with their students, just let us know. All right, so to get us started here, looks like we got 6 people on. Thanks to those of you that are just joining us. So to get us started here, I guess let's just talk about what we're staring at, Matt.
Yeah, so as Aaron mentioned, I'm Matt Olson, new at Stockton University, my first academic year here. And so what we're looking at, we're actually in the middle of an experiment that we have here on Stockton University Forest. So this is what we call the fire interval experiment. And what we're doing is we're looking at fire at different frequencies. We have treatments in which we burn some areas every year, some areas say once every 2 years, other areas once every 3 years, so on and so forth, all the way out to we have some units that only burn once every 15 to 16 years. We haven't quite gotten around to that yet, but eventually that's kind of the long-term plan out here.
And why are we burning? Why do we burn forests?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we burn for a variety of purposes. Here in the Pine Barrens, the number one priority for our burns really is to reduce surface fuels. So it's a way that we manage our fuels in the woods because we want to try to mitigate against the really big wildfires out here.
You mean like gasoline fuel?
It's in a sense for a forest fire. It is in a sense. It's just the leaf litter and stuff. If you look on the ground here, you can see all the leaves and fine twigs and branches and bark and.
Oh, so you mean that stuff that's going to burn up?
Yeah. That's the stuff basically that's the food for the fire. That's going to fuel its spread.
So you want to burn the forest to make sure that you get rid of all of this stuff so that it doesn't burn accidentally when like lightning or some stupid person sets it on fire.
Right. Well, it's usually the latter. So that's kind of the number one purpose really, particularly here in the Pine Barrens, is that we burn largely to reduce the fuels. Okay, more of a fuels management is what we call that. There are other reasons for burning too. From a forest management perspective, we burn because certain tree species don't regenerate very well, so their seeds don't germinate very well through thick leaf litter, through that same fuel material that we're trying to burn off. They don't really germinate well through that.
They can't poke their little heads out.
Yeah, they can't poke their little heads out. So you think those really light wind dispersed seeds, those really light kind of seeds that blow in the wind, like the little cotton plumes, they're so small, they really don't have enough in them to be able to grow through that. So we get rid of that fuel so that they have a better seed bed to be able to establish.
Got it.
So from a tree regeneration perspective, when we want to generate trees, some species may require that reduction in the leaf litter to be able to get established.
So we're trying to burn so that when a fire does accidentally happen, if it does by accident happen, it doesn't get too bad. But then also we're trying to burn so that we get rid of the leaf litter on top of things so that the seeds can grow back through, so that the seeds that were sort of smothered by the leaf litter can poke their heads out. So we're looking at a forest here that has burned. This burned, you said, last year? This past year?
Yeah. So this note over here, while we've been step inside of it here, hopefully not get ticks and triggers on it. But, so this unit here, this just burned this past March. So March 2020, this burned.
Okay.
And you can see the effect. You can still see the charring on the trees. You can see that.
Show us. You're talking about the charring on the trees.
Yeah. Here's an example of that. So you can see some of this low char on the trees. Now you're going to see that on all the trees out here for the most part. You can see some of that evidence here. You can see the char on the ground. So this is real recent. Had this happened last year, leaves and stuff from this past year would have fallen down and covered that stuff up. So you can see kind of the patches of the char on the ground.
So it looks like the fire then spread this way and hit the tree here. Right. And so why didn't this tree just go up in smoke?
Well, this species here, in particular, this is a pine tree here. This is pitch pine. And pitch pine has very thick, insulated bark, so it really helps to protect the tree against the flames of the fire. The other thing too is that the fire that they're using out here, their technique, we call it firing technique, they're burning at a time of the year in which they have really maximum control, however much control you can actually have.
So when do they burn?
So they burn usually late winter, early spring. It's usually kind of a late winter burn that they're burning, and they do it such so that they have low temperatures, so basically air temperature contributes to the temperature of the fire itself.
So it doesn't get out of control.
So basically it doesn't get out of control.
So they're looking for a low burn, something that's not too severe so that these trees that are adapted to burning don't go up in smoke, but everything else around here, all this leaf litter, does.
Exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so what we find is that a lot of times you don't see a lot of death in the big trees because it's relatively called a low intensity burn, or sometimes they call it a cool burn, which is an oxymoron. But they basically burn at a time when there's a low likelihood that these trees are going to get really injured. Stuff like that. Now it can negatively impact some of these smaller trees because the smaller diameter trees have less bark, and so they're more vulnerable to being damaged by the fires and stuff. Which is okay, because another reason why we burn out here is from what we call ecological restoration, or ecological restoration. And historically the Pine Barrens were kind of more of an open, kind of almost park-like kind of condition that frequent fire maintained, and we're trying to get fire back into these forests to kind of do that, and the fires would naturally come through and kind of thin out these small trees, leaving just the big trees. So we're hoping to accomplish that out here as well.
So you mean to maintain the pine trees? That's what you were trying to do. You want to make sure that the Pine Barrens stays the Pine Barrens.
Exactly.
And then it's because these pine trees are particularly adapted to fire, but the rest of this is not. Now, why do we want to keep pine trees around here? Why is it important to keep pine trees? Why not let everything else grow?
That's a great question. You know, a lot of it has to do with the uniqueness of the area. I think that the main purpose would be to try to maintain the essential character of the Pine Barrens.
All right. What would come in if we didn't allow it to burn?
If we didn't allow it to burn, you'd be seeing more of. So here's a scarlet oak right here, Quercus coxswain scarlet oak. So you'd be seeing more of these oaks basically taking over the pine. So as the pines, in a scenario where we're not burning frequently, we're not creating the good seedbed conditions for them to germinate, we're not opening up the canopy or anything for them to get established. It's these trees that actually have the competitive advantage in that situation. So they grow in the shade of the pines. The pines can't grow in their own shade, and before you know it, as those pines begin to die, those trees that basically shoot up and capture the gaps.
Got it.
By those big pines.
So we're trying to reduce the competitors to maintain the good characteristic of this forest, because the system is for many years been a pine forest, and it's been a pine forest because of all of these fires. And if we don't allow fire to happen, it will not be a pine forest anymore, and it would change pretty rapidly. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what happens when you burn? Like just give us a picture about what happens when this forest is about to burn. It shows up, you know, maybe tell us what this is right here. It's not just a trail, it's a really important type of trail.
Yeah. So how we get our firing done on this experiment, and on other parts of Stockton University Forest too, is that we actually have the New Jersey Forest Fire Service come out, and they're the ones that basically manage the burns for it. We're more like spectators. We kind of set up, we say, okay, this is where we want to burn this year. They come out and they actually do it. They're the real professionals. So they come out, you know, it's going to be in March usually of every year that we do some kind of burning out here. And so we work pretty closely with their local fire warden, and we just kind of set up a time and say, okay, let's go out and do that. And sometimes we'll take them out here, we'll walk around, we'll kind of show them the things that we want to do specifically. So the trail that you're referring to here, this is actually a fire line. So this is a break in the fuel continuity. This helps to kind of control the burn again, because then they dig in this relatively, it's almost like a trench essentially, deep, and literally you get this break in the fuel. Like, you don't really see a lot of that leaf litter covering this area here. So the fire over here, it's really difficult for that fire, kind of a low creeping fire, to spread from this site over to here because of this. This helps to kind of break that up.
I gotcha.
And then it also helps from the firing perspective, because when they're doing the prescribed burn, they have these devices called drip torches. Literally, it's like big looks like a big canister, and it basically just drips out fuel, a little bit of diesel fuel, and it just and it's lit as well. And they kind of just light the fire as they walk along. And by kind of breaking up these units into smaller units, they have a lot of edge that they can start those fires along to kind of get it to burn into the unit. So it helps them to kind of to manage their burns a little
So literally, they have a little canister of gasoline and diesel fuel that they drip, or they light it. They light the stream on fire and they drip it along the edge, and they allow it to be a controlled burn that rips through the forest. And then this prevents it from jumping over to the next. Sorry, I'm staring at Matt's crotch here.
Oh, Aaron.
I never said I was a good photographer. So tell us what's happening over here. Why is this area so much greener?
Okay, so this area on this side, so this area burned last in March of 2019. So this basically, it's been over a year now since this received its last burn. And so basically it's just had an additional year of shrub recovery as opposed to the other side, which just received its burn. So the site that just received its burn, it's set back, it's going to start sprouting back. You'll get these shrubs coming back again. In another year it may look something like what you just saw on the other side. And I should mention too, so the unit over here is one that actually burns every year. So this is an annual burn unit, and what we're starting to see is that we're seeing a dramatic reduction in the amount of shrub cover, just the density of the shrubs and just how abundant they are. Whereas on this side over here, I mean, you can somewhat see the effect now. I mean, this is burned, you know, I'd say 3 or 4 burns to this point, but it hasn't burned nearly as much as the annual burn, and yet we're seeing a little bit more of a shrub layer on this side. It isn't just because it's gone an extra year without being burned, it's just kind of the repeated effects of the fire really helps to kind of thin out that shrub layer, which is also something that we're trying to accomplish with some of our burns out here, because our shrub layers, they grow so thick that it's just kind of compete with that thick layer of shrubs. It's very difficult for them to be able to grow up through that. And by reducing that thickness and kind of thinning it out, it gives our trees a better chance of being able to grow through.
So first of all, let me just say hi to everybody that's showed up. Looks like we got about 18 people. We had about 20 people before. Thanks for tuning in. If you didn't know, we're live streaming with Dr. Matthew Olson here, who is a forester at Stockton University. He's been here for a little over a year now. Really happy to have him, and just talking about why we need to burn our forests. It is actually really important, if you didn't know, and I'm sure most of our listeners do know, but it is really important to burn forests to maintain them. We're not talking like a severe bonfire. We're talking about mild controlled burns that can burn off all of the leaf litter or fuel on the forest floor and reduce the competitors for the ever important oaks. And you can see how there are evidence of burn here. We're on Stockton's campus where we do experimental controlled burns. You can see evidence of burns. It gets lighter up the tree. These are burn scars right here, actual charring. Well, the outside of the tree is dead. That's okay. And so it's okay, but you can see how it's charcoal essentially, leaving char on my fingertips here. And I found some good pine cones for you guys. You can see that this right here is an example of a non-burned pine cone, and this is an example of a heavily burned pine cone. Pine cones need fire in order to open. You can see that this is a closed pine cone, whereas this is open. I believe the process dehissing is that the dehissing? Yeah, there's some terminology for you. I think because it hisses. Yeah. Anyways, is there a scientific term?
For the opening?
Yeah.
Probably. It's just escaping me.
Yeah, dehiss. We'll just call it dehissing. Anyways, so pine cones, they can't regenerate unless they can't actually release their seeds unless they burn. Which, if anybody has collected pine cones for Christmas, you know this because you got to put them in the oven for a little bit so they open up. And anyways, all right. So let's take a jaunt through the woods without getting any chicks and tigers on us. And by the way, if anybody has any questions or if you want me to talk about anything or go anywhere or do something stupid, by all means, just say something, chat it, and then I'll abide. This is for you guys, not for me. So why don't we identify some plants here? That's always a useful thing.
So we actually have. I can start right here. We have something right here. It's real easy to see.
Sorry for those of you that are just coming back on. My phone is old, and I need to get a new one. It's actually not that old. It's just they treat it like shit. Sorry, I know all this stuff. I'm just talking so to make sure that I don't know who's listening. It's impossible for me to say. This thing is so cool. I don't know, whoever was on just signed off. Alright, well, you know what? It's recording, so. Alright, so to just pretend like there's people on. We'll post it later. Okay.
Yeah, so here's the early low blueberry right here. Has the green stem, green twigs, just simple leaves, so they're not, here's an individual leaf right here. So that's one of the ones that's really common in our pine uplands. You also find it basically in all parts of New Jersey, all throughout the state, high elevations in the northwestern part of the state.
So this is Lowbush Blueberry.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And so Lowbush Blueberry is called Lowbush because it doesn't get too high?
Yeah.
Right.
It's close to the ground, and it's very common in our uplands.
Alright. My phone is buzzing because there's a conversation happening on the side. Alright. Thanks to those of you that are coming back on. I'm sorry that my phone died there. Thanks for showing back up. So we just identified Lowbush Blueberry, which is the dominant plant here, right? I mean, this is at least on this side. All of the greenery here is pretty much the Lowbush Blueberry.
Yeah, Lowbush Blueberry, and then we have a lot of black Huckleberry too. So probably the mix of those two.
What's black Huckleberry? Where's black Huckleberry? I didn't know there was a difference between black Huckleberry and blueberry. I thought they were the same thing. Just stupid people called it Huckleberry. I guess now I'm the stupid person. Susan says it's a little hard to hear Matt. All right, we'll get closer. Thanks to those of you that are showing back up. My phone died, so, we're trying to figure out whether something is Huckleberry or Blueberry.
Yeah, so we definitely have a mix of the two out here. This is mainly low blueberry that I'm seeing around here, but probably the other really common shrub that we have here is the black huckleberry.
Okay.
And in fact, I would even put forward, I think black huckleberry is perhaps the most abundant shrub in the state of New Jersey, largely because it's so abundant in the Pine Barrens.
Hey.
This is very recent. You see this tree, it still has its needles on it and everything, and it recently snapped and came down. We had a pretty intense windstorm come through here just a few weeks back.
Did you do it?
Me? No.
Did you push it over, Matt?
Oh no. Yeah, but we've had scattered, what we call blowdown, kind of throughout our experiment here. In fact, I'm looking across the woods here.
Is that a scientific term, blowdown?
Blowdown, yeah.
Yeah, it's a scientific.
Yeah, we refer to it as blowdowns.
Forestry's stupid.
What? Oh.
Blowdown.
Very descriptive, But you can see it out in the distance. There's another tree that came down, probably in that same storm. And so we've lost quite a few trees, but
but that's okay. That's okay because what happens when a pine tree falls down, you get a whole bunch of little tiny pine seedlings that come back up. It's the light streams down to the forest floor. It's okay. Trees can come down. They grow back.
And in this unit where we're standing right here, this is a site that actually received a thinning as well. So you can see there's a tree that was removed in the thinning right here. You can see it was cut there.
Thinning, you mean that it lost weight?
Not quite. It is now that it's decomposing. But no, so this is a stand that received what we call a silvicultural thinning. They can keep trees because at the time the stand just had too many trees in it.
All right.
So just one of those, just to improve the growth and the health of the rest of the stand of trees, they had to get rid of some trees to give the remaining trees more space to grow into. And we can see that if you kind of look, throughout the stand, you can see it's pretty open. You can see pretty far in the forest understory here.
All right.
And this is just some of the consequences of that thinning. But what happened here in this case for our thinning here is we had very limited here in New Jersey to take our wood. So literally they thinned the tree, they felled the trees and just left them in place out here. So it just kind of contributed to the fuel loads.
All right. So, to those of you that are coming back or switching on and off, thanks for coming on back. My phone died earlier, and we're out here with Matthew Olson talking about fire ecology. And if you can hear my phone buzzing, I really apologize. A bunch of friends of mine up in New York are having a wonderful conversation about COVID and how it affects universities. Yeah, Josh says, can you please turn off the vibrating notifications? I wish I could, Josh. Let's see. Oh, I think I can. Yeah, I can. All right, cool. Nobody ever said I was technologically apt. All right, so we've got mostly blueberry here. Let's try to find some other plants. What's all this stuff? Is it moss?
Yeah, it's just a moss.
Are you a moss expert? This moss is growing on dead stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many different species of bryophytes do you think we have out here? Bryophytes is the technical term for moss.
Yeah, that would be, my wife is a botanist, and that would be a good...
Well, where's your wife?
For her. She's at home.
Well, why didn't you bring her? Ugh.
You didn't invite her, Aaron. I would have brought her if you put that
well, clearly she's the more intelligent one.
No argument there.
Oh, see, we got a different species of moss right here. Oh, yeah. So, in case you didn't know, mosses are the stuff that grows on pretty much everything that's a little damp, especially rotting wood. Moss is just really important to regenerating a forest because it creates a substrate for organisms to hide in that I'm probably killing right now. It creates a substrate to collect moisture. It can contribute to breaking down the wood so that other plants can use all of that fiber and stuff. And there's maggots on this. Ugh. Okay.
Well, here's something else you might want to point out is, so we actually have some oak seedlings that are sprouting too. So the fire came through and would have killed some of these smaller oak seedlings and saplings. And when I say killed, it's just the top portion of the tree is what dies. The root system survives, and then it sends up new sprouts from the root system. So basically, these are some oak sprouts.
Are all oak sprouts purple when they start out like that?
Yeah, you know, this is just the look of the leaf as it's unfurling. So it'll have that initial look, that kind of reddish look, but then it'll develop into the full green leaf that you're all accustomed to.
So I can tell you right now, I know that red coloration in plants doesn't mean that it's dead. It usually is a result of the plant trying to protect itself from high sunlight. There's pigments that are like red pigments that are really good at protecting it from red sunlight. Hey, Susan asks, is there any reindeer lichen on campus?
For sure. For sure. And I know for a fact that it's out here because I've seen it out here just on this site.
Cool.
Kind of getting to some of the sandier the areas where we've been burning a lot. It's kind of more of an open sandy situation. That's often where you find it.
All right. So probably not. Maybe closer to the trail, if anything.
Right.
And Christine says, keep an eye out for lady slipper orchids.
I a nice picture of it, in fact. Yeah.
Well, where is it?
Take a ride. It's at Wharton State Forest.
Ugh, it's too far.
Probably about 30 minutes from here. And I know exactly where it is because I have it located because I'm tracking it.
Why? So Matt says he's tracking it. What's so important about tracking it? Look, we got some grasses growing back here. Guys, keep in mind that this forest was burned just a year ago, and you know this is early summer, and we're totally getting back a ton of life. Burning is not a bad thing, guys. Burning is really important to these forests. These pine trees survive, no problem, and then the whole forest comes back. All of this greenery is going to be a lot of greenery in a couple weeks. We're going to see this whole place bloom up. And it's going to be really even cooler when we come back out here in a few weeks because this area will still be relatively brown. It takes about a full growing season for stuff to really come back, but that's all, right? Just 1 or 2 full growing seasons.
Yeah.
Somebody gave me a long bryophytes I'm not reading the definition of bryophytes. I know what a bryophyte is. I'm an ecologist, for crying out loud. I got it. Oh, are you giving it for everybody else? Well, I appreciate that. All right, well, let's just take a hike here, you know. During COVID, let's get everybody out and outside and with my nice gimbal that I've got. Man, Adrian, you really have got to get the Department one. Thank you so much for buying one because this is amazing. I think I might have to get one for myself. It tracks so well. There's
Here, I
no
want to point
bounce.
this out. If you've got a moment here, look at this big.
No, we don't have a moment. This is a huge tree.
Yeah, this big old
This is hugging size.
Yeah.
Hug it.
I will.
Yeah, yeah, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, so we got a hat holder.
Oh, nice. All right, what were you going to say?
No, this is pitch pine, Pinus rigida. It's our signature species of the Pine Barrens. It's the most abundant tree in the state of New Jersey, in large part because it's the dominant tree of the Pine Barrens. And this is just a stellar example, big old tree. I know my predecessor, George Zimmerman, he went up coring a bunch of really big pines out here to get their ages. So we core into the tree so we can extract an increment core, what we say, basically a core of wood, and then we can age the trees based on their annual growth rings.
All right.
And I think some of those trees...
Does that hurt the tree?
No, it does not hurt the tree. And there are things that you can do if you are concerned about that. You can actually use like caulk to seal those wounds and things like that. But
so it's like hooking a fish through the mouth. Probably doesn't do too much damage.
Exactly.
All right.
Exactly.
All right.
Most of the wood is dead anyway.
But then it tells us the age of the tree from the tree
Yeah,
rings.
so
Yeah.
the age of the tree, we can get a lot of other things from it too. But I want to say the oldest trees that Dr. Zimmerman was telling me about, I think we're talking about maybe 130-year-old trees out here. So some of these pines, like this one here, has that kind of look, a really kind of a rough old bark. If you just
So this is a pitch pine, you said?
Yeah, this is a pitch pine.
And so Josh asks how many and which species of pine rely on forest fire. So we know pitch pine does.
Pitch pine is a very fire dependent species, so for sure. But as far as our native Pine Barrens pine species, we really have two Pine Barrens pine species that we consider to be more or less fire dependent. And so pitch pine would be one of them, and then shortleaf pine is the other. And both, and we have a mixture of both.
How can you tell the difference between shortleaf and pitch pine?
Okay, so as the name would imply, shortleaf, it has very short needles. So that's one way.
That's not what the name is. It says short leaf, not short needle. Why don't they call it short needle pine?
Because leaves are needles.
Ugh.
And
Foresters are stupid.
So like I would say that it's about shortleaf pine is maybe about, their needles are maybe 2/3 the length of pitch pines.
Okay.
And then shortleaf pine has so you get the needles come in bunches, right? With pines we call fascicles or bunches, and shortleaf pine has 2s and 3s per bunch. Pitch pine almost consistently just 3s per bunch. And then you have larger cones in pitch pine, which are more egg-shaped, and then in shortleaf pine they're smaller cones, and they're a little bit more elongate, so more of a 1.5 to 1 length-width ratio.
Can you use the bark?
You can use the bark for mulch.
No, I mean, can you use the bark to tell the trees apart?
Oh, for sure. So in the case of pitch pine, I find that the plates are very irregular. So these are the bark plates. They're just very irregular. They're very dark colored. Shortleaf pines tends to be kind of broader, flatter plates, a little bit more regular in their shape, and it's just a lighter colored bark. And then there's another characteristic too, that shortleaf pine has these little divots that develop in the bark itself. They're called resin blisters.
Okay.
And you don't see that in pitch pine, but you do see that in shortleaf.
So just these deep furrows.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So like we can.
Is this
there's a shortleaf right over here.
Well, let's go to it.
Yeah, let's go check out.
Let's go to it. And Chrissy says that pygmy pine does rely on fire. So
Yeah.
pygmy, Chrissy, you're not the expert here. We're talking with Matt. Don't tell us our business.
Well, but that pygmy pine is pitch pine. It's
Oh.
a variety of pitch pine.
Oh, see, Chrissy, did you know that pygmy pine is pitch pine?
Wow, we actually just picked out maybe the greatest example to show this, because many times I try to use this feature to identify the species, and I never find with such a trait expression here. You can see these little divots. If you look closely, these little holes, those are actually resin ducts in the bark. And so shortleaf pine produces those, pitch pine doesn't. So if you see that in
What do you mean by, wait, I'm actually learning something here. What are resin ducts?
So you can see right here how it's almost kind of wet looking. So that's actually resin right there. So basically the tree's protecting itself against insect attack. It kind of has these resin ducts all throughout the bark. So if an insect starts burrowing into it, then the resin comes in and basically forces out the insect, or it's toxic to the insect. And so shortleaf pine is just riddled with these little
Wait, why create the duct in the first place? If it creates an opening for the insects to come on in, why create the duct in the first place?
Well, what we're seeing here, because the bark, as the tree grows, this is the outer bark that's kind of sloughing off.
Okay.
But if you go a little bit further into the bark, that's where basically where you have the resin ducts are really functioning a little bit further into the bark.
Okay.
We're just seeing kind of.
Oh, we're just seeing. Oh, okay. So it's kind of like self-sealing from the inside.
Exactly. Oh, a little sci-fi. Somebody's trying to call me. Apparently.
Oh, we got a cell phone going on here.
Lakewood, New Jersey. I don't know who that is. this. So
Mark Dimitrioff came on. So this is really cool. So essentially the tree is like a self-sealing tire here. If an insect comes by and tries to attack it, it has all of these little ducts coming through it that'll like ooze sap into the channel where the insect is burrowing and then shove the insect out.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I had that. I mean, I don't have any insects burrowing in me right now, but maybe if I did. Josh asks, is Virginia or loblolly pine found mixed in these stands?
We have very little Virginia pine on Stockton University Forest, just a very little bit. You get to the western part of the Pine Barrens, the closer where I live, and there's quite a bit more of it there. And loblolly pine, I don't really see, there's not much of it at all here.
Yeah, that's more of a western species, and more south and western.
Yeah, it's more of a southern species, but it does make its way into it is native to southern New Jersey, but the very southern part of southern New Jersey.
All right.
You don't really find it so much here.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, in fact, and you can see what I mean by the kind of lighter bark. So here,
yeah,
you see the plates are a little bit lighter here.
But that black is charring from a fire. Yeah, that's not going to be characteristic of a non-burn tree.
Yeah, but if you look over here, you can see here's the pitch pine. You have to look up a little higher, and you can see that the bark just a little bit darker.
Yeah.
Right? And it doesn't have the real broad, flat plates. You know, they're much smaller, more irregular plates.
So Chrissy says, let me use my botany. Yes, Chrissy, I'm just joking with you. You can use all the botany that you want. You're smarter than I am by leagues when it comes to botany. And Susan asks, so if a pine tree has lots of resin ducts, does that mean that they are better at repelling beetles?
That's a really good question. I wish I had the background to be able to answer that fully, but to me it would suggest that. To me it's an adaptation specifically to protecting itself against those insects.
All right.
Now, it's interesting, you don't see it in pitch pine, but pitch pine is also known as being a very resinous species, so pitch pine can also kind of exude insects as well through its own resin pressure that it can form.
Do we use that resin for anything, like human manufacture? Do we use pine resin for anything?
That's a good. I don't know if we currently use it now. When turpentine and all of that as a sealant and various other things at a time, it was used quite a bit, and some of our species were actually used for that specifically.
Cool. So we've got a bunch of oak coming up here. I feel a tick crawling up my leg. That's great. And we've got a bunch of Lowbush Blueberry, and he says that there are Huckleberries in here, although I don't believe him. So, no, I do believe him. And so when deer come through here, what are they going to eat? They're definitely going to eat this oak, yeah? Yeah, they love eating the oak. The oak is tasty. What about the blueberry?
They'll browse on the blueberries.
All right, what about the pines? Do they like eating the pines?
Not so much.
All right, so deer come in, they don't like the pines.
Yeah, they're not. That's definitely not high in their preference list. Now, if you were to plant seedlings out here that were grown in a pampered nursery or something like that, then they'd probably munch on those because those are loaded with nutrients. But if it was just natural pine regeneration coming in here, probably very, very limited as far as any deer impacts that way.
Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you for your questions. If you have any more, just shoot them my way. If not, we're just going to go for a hike in the woods here, see if we can point out any other cool things, any other interesting plants. Just taking you guys for a nice little joyride while we're all still stuck in quarantine.
Back there, I can kind of...
What's this thing right here? Is this holly? What is this?
Yeah, this is northern bayberry.
Oh, bayberry.
Yeah, so here's Mirica, or actually formerly Mirica, now it's Morella.
So one of my listeners before wanted to know how to identify bayberry. This is a bit of a tough specimen to identify, but so we're looking at very smooth edges, kind of an oval shape.
Yeah,
wider in the midsection.
Well, they're toothed toward the tip, so if you look closely, you can see those teeth.
Toothed towards the tip.
But more toward the tip. So the base of the leaf, it tends to be what we call entire or pretty smooth.
Okay.
And the other thing too is the fact that it's semi-evergreen. So you can see, I mean, these are leaves produced from last year, and it's still holding on to.
Do they smell too when you?
They do.
They
Fantastic.
do.
Yeah.
This is a really young species. This really young individual, so I'm not going to take it off. But
it's very resinous, so it's going to.
Yeah.
There's just a great smell to it.
Cool. All right, what did you want to show us?
Yeah, we could head down this way, and I could show you some of the other units of the experiment.
Sure, Verizon gave me pretty much unlimited data this month. Let's do it. Man, this thing is cool. Look, I'm like moving my hand back and forth, and it's just not... Oh, it's so neat. This is like a toy. It is a toy. So interesting side note, while we're walking down here, it current ecology theory is that there used to be a time when plants grew, but nothing decomposed. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine this whole forest growing and then trees dying, but there were nothing decomposing? Now that's pretty cool. And it's called the Carboniferous Era. And this was millennia and millennia ago. But here's the thing. The reason why they think is because termites didn't evolve until much, much later. The plants came first and the termites came later. You didn't have wood rot and like all these other fungi and stuff to decompose trees. So the trees just built up and up and up on the ground and never decomposed. And just created this thing that we call oil that we dig up now and burn. Anyways, true ecologist, I have a stick in my pocket.
And so this over here, what we see on this side, Aaron, this is still part of our experiment, and it's kind of like what we were showing before, the site that had burned back March 2019. This one also last burned March 2019, and this is actually a...
How many different plots do you guys have?
We have... Of course you'd ask me.
Is it more than 20?
Yeah.
More than 20 plots.
I think it's 25.
25 plots that we burn at different intervals.
And we have, and for all the different intervals we have, it's fully replicated. So we have 3 replications of all the treatments that we have out here. And so this is just one of the replicates.
And so the reason why we replicate it is because we're trying to figure out how a forest responds to burning. If we want to tell forest managers, how often do you need to burn a forest for good ecology, right? You need to do experiments. So we're doing the experiments. That's what we got to do. But sometimes ecology experiments, they require a lot of time, a lot of space. How many acres are we talking? Maybe like a couple hundred?
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple hundred acres. That's one of the great things about Stockton is we have 1,600 acres of Pine Barrens. And some fantastic students and staff, if Kat Clark is watching, who have helped to trail out the whole forest. Anyways, where are we walking to?
And something I'll point out here, because I don't know if we're going to get another chance as we continue on here. So this unit over here, this area here, you can see the char on the trees here, but you can notice also how the shrub layer is a lot taller.
Okay.
So this is a much more developed shrub layer. So this is a
Oh, yeah.
So this burned basically 5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Is what you're looking at. So this is about 5-6 years of shrub layer recovery following the burn.
Oh, we got more Bayberry here too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Smell it this time.
Yeah, we're actually getting some other stuff here too. So there's this is sheep laurel.
Sheep laurel?
Yeah, so it's closely related to the
Oh,
mountain
I just picked that up and said it was Bayberry.
So it's another evergreen
I'm an idiot.
shrub that we have. No, you're not, Aaron. And so here's sheep laurel. It's in the same genus. It's basically in the same group, if you will, as mountain laurel. And then there's some other. Here, I can find it. Here,
Yeah, let's get some ticks.
Oh,
Yeah.
This would be the right place.
Yeah, it's cold out. It's probably not going to be too many ticks.
And so here, and this looks like it could be going into flower pretty soon. So this is inkberry. So
Inkberry?
Yeah. So this is actually
Because it produces ink?
It's black berries that basically that you could squeeze it out and almost kind of use it as ink, whatever the juices within the berry. But so this is actually very closely related to the American holly. So this is also sometimes called inkberry holly, or gallberry is another one named for it. So it's an evergreen. It just doesn't have the real sharp spines along the edges like you typically think of with a holly.
Okay.
But we do have hollies out here as well. I can see there's some hollies.
Oh yeah, definitely some hollies.
Yeah,
all right, guys, I'm not going to hike straight through it. There's a lot of ticks in here. Josh wants to know what happens to all the bugs and animals when the burn occurs. You gotta answer the tough question.
Yeah, that's a tough question.
You gotta answer it.
With the real mobile animals, they're fine. They're able to get out of it.
Like a rabbit?
Yeah.
Okay,
rabbit,
so we're not gonna have.
Make it out, depending on the speed.
Just
of the
tell
fire.
me that the rabbits are gonna make it out and make me
the
happy.
Rabbits made it out.
Thank
fine.
you.
I
Thank
talked to
you.
them afterward, they're good. But some like the
Speak
insects
to
and
rabbits.
stuff-
You don't know how to speak to. So other insects and stuff.
Yeah, like things that maybe are less mobile. Those are the ones that get caught in flames, that kind of thing. Some of the at the time of the year in which we're burning too, a lot of these animals that they're not really up and about. They're
So you mean that some of the insects are still like in hibernation under into the ground, and they're going to be okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we got to tell ourselves to make ourselves sleep at night.
Yeah, that's what we tell ourselves.
Yeah, well, I mean, I got to tell you, from an ecosystem ecology standpoint, when you burn everything, it's really important because you put all of those nutrients back in the ground. And so insects, I feel really bad for anything that dies. I don't want anything to die. But it is important because when those insects burn, it's nutrients that go back in the ground and create more nutrient, create more insects, and create more trees. Excuse the plane up above. All right, and yes, thank you so much. Do forest fires occur in wetlands?
They do. So you can get some pretty severe fires in wetlands, like in so just take New Jersey for an example. Here in South Jersey with our Atlantic white cedar, historically fires were important in maintaining Atlantic white cedar in wetlands, which seems almost counterintuitive that a wetland condition really requires fire, but these fires coming from the uplands would rip through these Atlantic white cedar stands. And in the aftermath of that, you get a lot of new cedar regeneration coming in almost dog hair thick. And so you get these really dense cedar stands developing in the aftermath of that. So
and maples burn too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because maples will come back. I know, right? That we're experiencing a lot of maples coming in, and fire will kill the maples.
Right. Yeah, you need repeated fires will really knock those the maples down.
If we have any Stockton students watching this, and I know that we do, you're free to come onto campus and hike these fire breaks, you know, as long as we're not burning, which doesn't occur more than once a year. But you're more than welcome to come and hike it.
So here's a unit, well, just recently marsh one here. And then this is one that, the last time this burned was 5 years ago. So I don't know the exact unit that's burned here, but this is one that burned 5 years ago and then just burned again this March, which gives you kind of this more charred appearance.
Man, that is such a cool picture right there. Just like yin and yang. So you said this one burned last year too?
Yeah, or this just burned.
What fern do we have here?
So here I was hoping to find these. This is Bracken Fern.
Bracken Fern.
So this is the Bracken Fern, and Bracken Fern is one that's promoted by fire. So often where you have lots of fire coming in, you can see all the sprigs of the if you look across, you can see it all starting to come up in here. In fact, it's one of those that I think as we go further into this experiment, we're going to start shifting the understory plant community from more of a shrubby community to one that's going to be more dominated by these herbaceous plants, including the ferns.
Now you can always tell a fern because this one doesn't. Don't they have pollen on the underside of the leaf?
This with the technical term, the sori. A little bit later in the year, we'll see that.
Oh, okay, so not right now.
Yeah, so spores.
But usually ferns have this kind of leaf structure, so you can always tell that. How long does it take for the bark to stop showing signs of char? Well, I imagine that's dependent upon tree growth and how fast the bark scales. What do we call this? A scale?
Yeah, these are kind of platey. This the bark plates kind of pop off.
Is there a technical term?
Yeah, plates.
Why is this tree orange?
That because I was running out of flagging and I needed to quickly flag out the units for the guys to burn. So that's what this is here for. So this just indicates the corner of the unit.
So we've identified some blueberry, lowbush blueberry, and highbush blueberry looks pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, we probably look around long enough. Highbush is right.
Oh, let's go. Let's get some ticks. Highbush blueberry, lowbush blueberry, inkberry, bayberry, oak. Oh, we've got a nice little red oak seedling right here. That's beautiful. Yeah, red oak?
Yeah, a little scarlet oak coming up.
Oh, I thought you said it was red. So it's scarlet oak.
Yeah, it's scarlet oak, but they fall into a group that we call the red oak group.
Oh, well, that's so much I know.
Make matters more confusing.
So this is highbush?
Yeah.
So it looks pretty similar, just higher. Yeah.
We also have, so here are some huckleberries here that are actually, we're catching it in flower. So there's the huckleberry in flower.
All right.
And we have a couple kinds of huckleberries that grow in the Pine Barrens.
What's the taste difference between huckleberries and blueberries?
Huckleberries, they're a little seedier. You know, you actually bite into the seeds, a little grittier when you bite into them.
And this is laurel, yeah?
Yeah, and here's a mountain laurel. Yeah. So here's the mountain laurel I showed you before, the sheep laurel, and this is basically the cousin of that, the mountain laurel. which is the one that produces the real showy white flowers.
All right. Sorry, you were saying that they're a little seedier and...
Yeah, a little seedier. Kind of, actually, like when you bite into it, you actually feel the seeds when you bite into it.
But they taste similar to a blueberry.
Yeah, they can have a little bit of sweetness, maybe not quite as sweet as the blueberry.
All right, we could just keep on filming forever, but we're 45 minutes in, so I think that we're going to cut this short pretty soon here.
Yeah.
Unless there's something else that you wanted to walk us to.
I was going to say, it's just right down here, we can start seeing it already, is that we have an annual burn over here that really, the Bracken Fern is really starting to come in, which is just
I
really
like that name,
interesting.
Bracken Fern. Just keep on saying it, Bracken Fern, Bracken Fern.
Or Bracken. Bracken.
It's the Bracken.
Unleash the Bracken.
Sorry if you already said this. Is the fire department on site during the controlled burns?
They are. They are.
Hang on, let me get you closer to the...
Oh, okay. Yeah, yes, they are. And so, by fire department, it's New Jersey Forest Fire Service that's here. And I'm almost certain when they decide to go out and burn, they probably let local fire stations know that and everything else, so that all those folks are in the loop. But we don't have like fire trucks out here on the ready to like put out the fire necessarily. New Jersey Forest Fire Service handles all of that. They have trucks with water tanks that they kind of do it themselves and stuff. So they're well equipped to be able to do it.
And they do a really good job of trying to alert the local community that there's a burn happening so that nobody gets freaked out that there's a bunch of smoke.
Right.
They can't reach out to everybody though. But this is a science, guys. The way that they burn these forests, this is pretty advanced stuff, and so they know what they're doing. Accidents occasionally happen. They occasionally happen, but when they do happen, they're nothing is really usually that bad. Of course, there's always the horror stories, but you know, they're used to this. They burn so much, right? I mean, that's their business during most of the year, during that one part of the year. I mean, they're real experts on this.
Yeah, in our New Jersey Forest Fire Service, I mean, I'll put a shout out to them. I mean, they really are the best of the best. When it comes down to it, they've been doing it for so long, and they really do have it down to a science.
Yeah, I mean, they know what they're doing, and they do far more good than the few times that you might hear or read about. You know, it's really not that bad, and it is so important for the local ecology here. And also, if they didn't do it, you know, there's been so many papers written about the Pine Barrens and how it's America's kindling, that it could be the next big fire because there's so much dead stuff on the ground that hasn't been burned, that if they didn't do it, we would have a fire that destroyed all of the Pine Barrens, and we would have destroyed all of the houses too. So they're so important. They are stopping that one in a lifetime event from happening where it would be utter catastrophe. Right. All right, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out just a couple things in here. So we're in another one of the replicates of the annual burn. So we started out looking at the annual burn, talking about that. Here's another one. So this one just burned this year. And this, again, gets burned every year. But what happens when you burn it every year, you really reduce the fuel so much that you kind of get kind of a patchy fuel continuity. And so when you do run a fire through here, it doesn't necessarily spread over the entire area. Like you'll actually get some patches that don't burn. So like right here, you can see where the leaves are still here. Like these leaves obviously didn't burn up in the last fire. And like right there, you see where the shrubs are coming in. You can see that the leaves underneath of them. That patch right there just did not burn. The burn kind of crept around that.
Maybe because it was just moist?
Yeah, moist, or maybe there just wasn't
moist.
Yeah, very well could be that. Or it could be there was a lack of continuity in the way the fire moved. There was no way for it to really get into there. It just didn't spark into there.
All right. That's pretty cool.
And then we can also look here. I don't know if you can see it up there. There's that bird box.
Oh yeah, let's check out the bird box, see if anybody's home.
Yeah, I wish I had...
Please, guys, if you have any other questions before we sign off, go ahead and ask them.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, that is a massive bird box. So that's got to be... I don't know, it looks too big for a wood box.
Is that where the Jersey Devil lives?
All right, let's turn around. Let's get out of here. I don't like that. So yeah, you can see on this.
So was that part of an experiment, or just something that somebody put up at one point to try to...
Somebody put that up, and there are other things that they put up throughout here for birds and for other wildlife and stuff too.
Man, it's so nice being out here, middle of quarantine. Nothing going on.
The rain's really held out. We got a little nuthatch there, aggressive nuthatch.
Yeah, my phone's not that good. They're flying.
And that's another thing we've noticed out here is that with the burning, we suspect that it's starting to change the wildlife that we find out here too. So we're basically modifying the habitat.
Yeah, because you burn the rabbits.
And we burn the rabbits. So
You sadistic freak. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. He's really good. He didn't do anything.
But we've been noting that like a lot of bluebirds have been coming through. So like kind of walking through, it's not rare to see lots of bluebirds flying through, and hopefully because we're through the fires and stuff, we're creating snags. We're just standing dead trees, and woodpeckers will use those, and the nuthatches that I can hear now, you know, they're utilizing a lot of this material too.
Is that the bird that's? Is that the birds that just?
Yeah, they're real nasally. Yeah, so we're basically creating a different kind of habitat out here, and it's benefiting a different suite of species.
Nice. So Lorianne is asking, and I don't know, Lorianne, if you are a prospective student thinking about Stockton or just curious, but she asks how much of the classwork is done outside, and I can answer that one. Give Matt a break from talking. We do a lot of our classwork outside. I mean, with 1,600 acres of Pine Barrens, that's what we specialize in. We love doing this stuff. I would much rather take a class. Well, all of us would much rather take a class outside for the day and identify trees and play around in the woods. And you know, maybe we don't find what we're looking for, but a day in the woods is worth an entire semester in the classroom. So we do a lot of stuff outside. All right, guys. Well, I'm gonna sign off here. David Morgan says they burn and that ruins the environment for reptiles and mammals and birds. Well, David, I don't know where you're getting that information from, but I can tell you I've been studying ecology, and my friend here Matt has been studying ecology for a very long time, and it actually creates far more habitat. Even the reptiles and the mammals and all the birds, they rely on these burns. They rely on the new germination that comes up. The birds rely on all of the blueberry seeds that come up. They rely, all of the mammals. The mammals flee when the fire happens, and then they come back, and it opens it up. And we certainly aren't ruining the habitat for deer. They're overabundant, as you very hopefully well know. In New Jersey, we could stand to lose some deer. And the reptiles. I mean, there's only one, maybe a couple species of lizards here. And the amphibians are all buried underground when we do burn, and so they're not affected.
And we have the northern pine snake that actually benefits tremendously from this type of burning, because it opens up the canopy, it creates the type of habitat where the northern pine snake, which is, I mean, certainly it's a state-listed threatened endangered species,
sure,
but I think it also has federal status as well. So something like this regular burning creates a habitat that benefits that species, sure, as well.
And I mean, you know, I'll sign off after this unless somebody asks another question, but I will say that, you know, we are not the first person to burn forests. In fact, forests have been burned for centuries and centuries by humans. Native Americans did controlled burns of their own because they recognized that it benefited the forest. It grew back with a vengeance after they burned it. It really does help out quite a bit. Forests left on their own would burn with any lightning strike at a small burn. And in fact, there's a fundamental principle in ecology called the intermediate disturbance hypothesis that says small occasional disturbances really do promote diversity and productivity. David asks, how do lizards and snakes escape? That's a great question. A lot of them bury themselves underground. With moderate burns, it's only the very surface of the ground that gets hot, and so they just bury themselves in their little hidey hole. They can certainly climb up a tree, and it doesn't get very hot. It's with a moderate burn like the forest management crew does. It doesn't.
And I'll be honest, I mean, we're burning at a time of the year where these animals are below ground anyway. We're burning like in March and even February and stuff like that at a time of the year where they're really not up and about.
Yeah.
So it's really not as much of a concern that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it really, it's understandable that people would think that, because, I mean, fire is usually listed as bad and fire destroys things, but really out here, animals are adapted for it. Just like animals are adapted for cold winters, winter doesn't kill them. They know how to deal with it, and animals out here know how to deal with fire too. So David, thank you for asking those questions and getting us talking about that. That's great. And if you're interested in more, just email us and we'll be happy to give you some more information. That's our job, is education, and we love to do it. So with that, I'm going to sign off, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It'll be posted on Facebook, and big shout out to Matt. Thank you so much, Matt, for helping me out this week. Next week, we're going to be looking for carnivorous plants in a bog, and I'm going to try not to drop my phone. Catch you later.